Hello, I'm Isla Carlson from Wakefield High School in Arlington, Virginia, and my project is the effect of air pollution on the efficiency of solar panels. Some research background. So photovoltaic cells on solar panels only convert about 14% of sunlight into energy. So solar panels are constructed with other conductive materials, and then the photovoltaic cells convert the photons in sunlight into energy called photovoltaic energy or PV. So a study was also published in the Journal of Energy and Environmental Science. Based on its findings, it estimated the amount of lost energy potential within certain locations. So Delhi loses about $20 million a year, Kolkata loses 16 million, Beijing loses 10 million, Shanghai also loses 10 million, and then Los Angeles loses $6 to $9 million in lost energy potential in a year. The research question was, does air pollution affect the efficiency of solar panels? So this project was chosen in order to learn more about renewable energy sources. And a source of inspiration for this project was the use of solar panels in daily life and the idea of an environmentally friendly source of electrical power. So it's hoped that this experiment will prove that air pollution harms the environment and has a negative effect on solar panel efficiency. So the hypothesis was, if there's low air pollution, simulated using translucent sheets, in this case, low air pollution would be one translucent sheet, which was a level of the independent variable. Then the solar panel will produce the most volts, microamps, and microwatts, because the less simulated pollution there is, the more light reaches the solar panel. A source of inspiration for the hypothesis was a Gale article, which defined pollution as contaminated air, and that kind of helped inspire the whole idea of this project. So the current in microamps, the voltage in volts were measured using a multimeter on the project board and multiplied together to calculate the power in microwatts. Due to the difficulty of creating a simulated atmosphere, translucent sheets were chosen to model the pollutant because they could be easily kept constant, unlike maybe a gaseous form of pollution that could have been used to model. So the levels of the independent variable were 1 translucent sheet, 3 translucent sheets, 5, 7, and 9 translucent sheets, and then the control was 0 translucent sheets. And initially there were proof of concept trials conducted just to prove that the solar panel and the light source worked and everything ran smoothly, but this was not used in the data analysis because the light bulb that is in the setup, which was used for all the other trials, was not used in the proof of concept, so these were not used in the comparison because realistically, when solar panels generate electricity, it's being used in some sort of way. So the project was built with a solar panel that powered a light bulb. The light source was placed on a stand above the solar panel, and then a varying number of translucent sheets were placed in between the light source and the solar panel. So there were 10 trials conducted for each level of the independent variable, and while building the setup, there was assistance given wiring the components together, such as the solar panel to the multimeters and to like the light switch to the light bulb in the socket. And a skill learned throughout this process of experimentation was how to do this safely. So a major constraint in experimental design was the simulation of the pollution, and in the future, the use of a more realistic simulation of pollution would benefit the applicability of the data. Here's a page of images on the top right. You can see the setup. So on the far left of the image, there is a stand for the light source, which is shining down on the solar panel, and you can't see it, but there's a translucent sheet in between, which you can actually see on the image on the bottom right. It's placed in between those. And then a photo shows measuring the voltage and the current. The photo in the bottom left shows a difference in brightness. When I was conducting the experiment, you could see a visible difference in the brightness from even adding a sheet to removing it. So here are my graphs. On the left, the graph shows on the x-axis the amount of air pollution and the number of translucent sheets, and that increases going left to right. And on the y-axis, the average current, voltage, and power shown in microamps, volts, and microwatts. The green line is the current, voltage is blue, and power is gray. And you can see there's a decline as the amount of air pollution increases. You can see the averages of the 10 trials on the right in the table. For example, with one translucent sheet used, the average current was 21.01 microamps versus with 9 sheets, it generated about 8.4 microamps. So there's a decrease. And another example would be from one sheet with 5.45 volts compared to with 9 sheets with 5.33 volts. So the results show as 2 sheets are added for each level of the independent variable, which would be going from 1 sheet to 3 sheets to 5 sheets and so on. The average voltage, average current, and average power decreases, showing that as the amount of pollution increases, the amount of electricity produced from the solar panel decreases. This was a trend in the data. The downward sloping of the graphs is a visual sign of that. As the pollution increased, the electrical generation decreased. And another trend was the consistency of the data for the trials. When experimenting with one translucent sheet, for example, when the 10 trials were conducted, around the same current were found for each level, for each trial. An unexpected challenge was the placement of the translucent sheets. Bearing coverage could have occurred initially before I realized that they should be placed and be ensured to be placed very evenly to ensure that the sunlight or the light source didn't cause unevenness on the solar panel, affecting how much light reached it. And another unexpected problem was ensuring that the light source lay flat on the stand built above the solar panel. Thankfully, it did stay on and it didn't fall and damage the solar panel, but I had to ensure that it didn't angle and shine sunlight diagonally instead of straight on the solar panel. So some limitations for the data were the capabilities of the solar panel. It is a 10 watt, 15 volt solar panel, so it wouldn't be able to produce much above these. And the sun was also constant in this experiment, which was unrealistic to how the sun would be inconsistent throughout a day or inconsistent throughout a season due to weather or cloud patterns. So a strength for the data was the consistency of the data that I mentioned throughout the trials. And then a statistical analysis was conducted. So ANOVA tests are used when comparing the means of 3 or more sets of data to see if there are significant differences between the means. So the null hypothesis would be that air pollution does not have an effect on the efficiency of solar panels. And after conducting the analysis, p-values for the voltage, current, and power were less than 0.05, so the null hypothesis can be rejected, showing that there is a significant difference between the means of the data, and the changes in the pollution between each level did have a significant effect. In conclusion, the hypothesis was confirmed. The level of independent variable that simulated the least amount of pollution, or one translucent sheet, produced the most electricity. It was also confirmed that the existence of pollution will hinder the sunlight's ability to reach the ground by deflecting or absorbing it. I can connect this back to the article saying that pollution was contaminated air, which initially inspired the hypothesis. So this work can be expanded to test different forms of pollution on solar panel efficiency, like dust or smog, or a future experiment could research real levels of pollution variation throughout maybe a day, a year, a month, or maybe a season, or different cloud patterns affecting it along with that, and relate the specific levels of the independent variable to reference those very specific levels of pollution found in a certain circumstance. An application for this work is educating society about renewable energy sources and the negative effects of non-renewable sources. So it is difficult for solar panels to generate the same amount of electricity that fossil fuels do. Furthermore, the use of fossil fuels to generate electricity increases the pollution problem, which further will block sunlight from reaching the solar panels, increasing the inefficiency in solar panels. So the most important lesson learned from this project is that there is a need to develop solar panels with increased efficiency.